I'm the fifth Alejo in my family.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But the first Alejo started growing and exporting the coffees in the 1840s. So we have a tradition of over 150 years in our family. And so he used to produce in Costa Rica, and he exported directly to England.
Welcome to, or welcome back to Coffee with April. My name is Patrick Rolfe, and this is a conversation with some amazing professionals and entrepreneurs in the coffee industry, sharing their perspective and experience. It's about integrity, quality, and the future. For this episode, we sat down with Alejo Castro. He's the owner and farmer at the farm Volcan Azul in Costa Rica. We've been really happy to work with his coffees for the last 2 seasons, and we truly believe they're some of the best coffees in Costa Rica's. This was a unique opportunity for us to connect with our farmer and share his story, and we're really happy to be able to do that.
We're sitting in Bordeaux, which is basically southwest of France. We're in the Belco headquarters. In front of me, I have a really interesting person, a person that we at April has been buying coffee from 2 seasons now, and a producer of some of the best coffee in Costa Rica, maybe the best, Alejo from Volcan Azul. We're super happy to have you here, and really thankful that you take the time to be here.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm very glad and proud that you are interviewing me. We are also very proud to sell our coffee to you, because we know that you take care of quality very much. And what we are trying to do in Costa Rica is try to have the best quality of coffee as possible. So we have a really long tradition in the coffee business. So I will try to show you what we do over there and what we think about the coffee business.
Sure. For me as and I think for all of us as a coffee roasters, I mean, you realize very quickly when you roast coffee that the roasted coffee is never better than the green coffee. It will never be. And there's an endless amount of things that we can learn about green coffee, and especially at April and me personally, we were really trying to understand this as more and more and getting better, just a better insight in what people do. Can we start by, for those of you that don't know, what is the background story of Volcan Azul? What kind of farm is it, and what is your goals with it? How long have you guys been around?
Well, our main goal is to produce excellence in coffee, and I think we have 3 main pillars that we are strong. Of course, we need to have a great coffee. That's one of the pillars. Then we have a very long tradition, and we also have a lot of conservation, so to be sustainable. But I always start like explaining our tradition, because it's the best way to understand our passion with coffee and why we want to have this excellence, because excellence for us is a very big word. It means that we have to take care of every detail since we start planting the coffee trees and then milling the coffee. So it's taking care of every single detail and that's why I start always explaining our tradition, that it's over 150 years old. I can show you here, maybe later you can show some of the pictures of the people who started this tradition in my family.
Yeah, sure, that's amazing. We just to reference for you guys listening, so we have basically a little slideshow here as well of the Volcan Azul farm, which we gonna have a look through as well, and we're gonna reference that, and we're gonna make sure that you guys are able to see this picture in some capacity as well, together with the podcast, for sure.
So this is in this picture you can see the first Alejo. I'm the fifth Alejo in my family.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But the first Alejo started growing and exporting the coffees in the 1840s. So we have a tradition of over 150 years in our family. And so he used to produce in Costa Rica, and he exported directly to England.
Yeah, you told me that amazing story yesterday over dinner, where he was basically taking about, it would take, was it 3 to 4 months?
2 months. Well, at that time we only had a port in the Pacific.
Oh wow, yeah.
We didn't have a port in the Atlantic. So, well, first we have to start from the farm. We used to use ox carts. So to bring the cherries from the field to the mill, and then to the mill to the port. And after that, in sail ships, he needed to go down to Cape Horn in Argentina, and then up to London with the coffee. It was a 2-month trip each way. So 2 months up to London, 2 months back to Costa Rica, maybe 1 month trading the coffee in London. So he was basically 6 months selling his coffees. So the first Alejo did that trip over 20 times. We have all the proofs of his shipments, and that's when you think about that, you think how difficult it was to export coffee those days, and that's one of the main reasons that we want to be worthy of that effort they did back then, and that's why we want to produce excellent coffee, to be worthy of that big effort, because right now a container takes 22 days to go to Europe. We can travel 10 hours, a 10-hour flight to Europe, and right now the communications are really easy. And yeah, for me it's really interesting how they did back then. And
I mean, it's such a big difference. Just referencing when we got samples from you earlier this year, right? I mean, that was a DHL shipment that took like what, 2 days?
yeah.
I mean, it's a different world, it's a different reality now than in the past. Yeah.
We have a really direct communication. We talk through WhatsApp really easy. If you want to make me a question about the coffee, I can answer the same day. So now I think it's really easy, and that's why we are proud of this history that we have with coffee. And that was, this part I'm telling you is from the side of my father, but we also have a long tradition from the side of my mother. And this is my family from the side of my mother, that they came from Hannover in Germany.
Oh wow.
This is Wilhelm Kalle, who came from Hannover to the south of Mexico first. And he started to produce coffee in the 1890s. So we also have over 100 years in the other side of my family. And this is Walter Kalle, his son, or my great-grandfather, who decided also to buy farms in Costa Rica. And that's how both families came together, and that's why I have these two strong traditions. And I always say that instead of blood running through my veins, I have coffee running through my veins. And finally, what I wanted to show you is that we found out a couple of weeks ago, and that's why it's really interesting for us to be here at Bordeaux, because we also have some French heritage. So we have a great grandfather called Pierre Bonnefil, and we found out that he had a sail ship, and in one of his advertisements that he had in the United States, because he went to live in USA. We have a very old advertisement of a newspaper. Here you can see Pierre Bonnefil, and it's from 1802. And here is what he was selling from. This is his actual ship. We found a drawing. But he was selling. Here you can see 300 bags. 45 barrels of first quality green coffee. So we found out that we have been dealing with coffee over 200 years.
So it's 1802. Wow,
1800 or
that's
02 is
amazing.
this,
Probably
this
before then as
advertisement.
well. Yeah, exactly. So it can be way before that as well.
Yeah, so over 200 years with in the coffee business, something incredible for us, and we have all the documents that where we can see all that. So yes, that's why I always start explaining our long tradition with this.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. I mean, it's 200 years in the making, which is an extremely long time. That the world has changed, everything has changed more or less, right? And what do you see? Also referencing back to the more traditional side, right? What are the main kind of changes over those years that's been really important for your family and your trading and your quality and your direction of the farm?
Well, of course, there are many changes now, but I think we're going back to some things that they did back then. For example, back then every farm had its own mill or micro mill back then. So the first Alejo had a mill in every farm he had, and they had these amazing Bourbon and typical varieties that we are planting again in Costa Rica, because a few years ago we only planted Caturra Catuai, because many people were thinking more about bigger mills and be more efficient, have higher yields, and now we're coming back to these old varieties, the Bourbon and Typicas, that they're giving us a better quality. Of course, right now we have new processing methods or new processes, but I think we're coming back. On those days, they had a really good quality, and that's why Costa Rica and coffee became that famous, because all the work they did back then. And maybe in the 1960s in Costa Rica, because of some laws, we changed that mentality to produce higher volume and be more efficient with the cost, and not that focus on quality. And we are going back to that, and to produce again micro lots and separate everything by variety and try to do new processes. So I think we're changing in that direction.
Yeah, sure. We talked a bit about it last night over dinner again, and we referenced. I asked Alejo about natural anaerobic fermented coffees, because that's a new trend in Costa Rica now. We see so much of it this season, and Alejo was mentioning that the focus of what you guys do, which is also why we found you guys in the beginning, because the focus is more in varietal diversity and the quality of each varietal, and trying to showcase that rather than creating additional flavors with processing, right? So you want clean coffees from the varietal to shine through.
Yeah.
And we started buying from you guys because we saw you guys at Obata, a really interesting varietal originally from Brazil, at least largely farmed there, leaf resistant, positive in a lot of ways, high yielding, delicious. And I mean, this season now we're buying an H1 varietal from you guys, which is also a relatively rare varietal, right? So that's something that we also really appreciate, to keep the cleanliness of the coffees and the focus on the individual varietals, right? And I think over the time here in Bordeaux, we talked a lot about varietals, and you guys have a lot of different varietals, a lot of different focuses. What is the kind of main version now or focus of the modern Volcan Azul, right? If we look at what you're doing today in terms of varietals and in terms of coffee quality.
I explained you a little bit about our tradition and where our passion comes from. Here you can see me at the coffee farm when I was little with my father. You can see me here working with him. Here we were paying to the pickers for each basket. Here you can see my sister and my brother. So yeah, I explained you our passion and that coffee is part of who we are. But yeah, we have this great passion, but passion by itself, it doesn't give us a good coffee. So we have to think right the steps that we have to do in order to produce this excellence. And one of our, what I think one of the best ways to produce excellent coffee is to have a very good investigation about varieties. And that's why we have over 40 varieties in our farm, and every year we're going to make to try something new. The idea is every year have a new variety, and the idea with this is that we want to have a wide menu. Every single roaster or barista, they have a preference of flavors that they want. And basically, we want to have a little bit of every flavor in our farm. We have a great terroir. I will explain you a little bit later about the environment we have over there, the special environment we have over there. So right now we have a great terroir, great conditions over there. We believe almost all varieties are giving us a great quality. And so our focus is to have a lot of varieties, and with that we already have some flavors more florals, like our geishas, or some of our Ethiopian varieties we have planted in our farm, or we have more traditional flavors, more chocolate, or like our Katura or Katwai, and we will have some other exotic flavors like our SL28 or our mocha varieties. So we're focusing more on varieties over. Of course, we are going to investigate about new processes, but we think that with our terroir and these different varieties, we're going to have great coffees from our farm.
Sure. Can you explain more about the specific terroir on the farm? Where are we in terms of altitudes, in terms of soils, shade trees, and so on and so on?
Of course, we have the altitude. We are over 1,500 meters. We start on 1,500 meters. But we have something else very interesting that I was going to explain you later about our conservation areas in the farm. But in our main plantation, we have our main plantation is 300 hectares, but 200 hectares are just conservation of the forest. So we have found out that that having this big forest, because over those 200 hectares we have a national park. So here you can see this is the Poás volcano. It's the third biggest crater in the world. Here we have our mill. And on top of this place, we have the 200 hectares that we own of just forest. And over that, we have a big national park. And thanks to that, we have a very big change in temperature during the harvest season. So during the night we have even 10 degrees Celsius. For us it's really cold. For you it's not that cold maybe,
sure.
But for Costa Rica that's really cold. And during the day we can even have 30 degrees Celsius. So that big change in temperature is giving us a higher brix content in the mucilage. And at the end is what's giving us such a great quality in our coffee. So. And the other thing about our terroir is that this is a volcanic region, so we have volcanic sandy soils, very rich. They are a little bit acidic, but we can control that with limestone, adding limestone to the soil. But so we have the soil, the great soil, and we have the great climate that is very specific from that region, and that's why we're lucky that. Almost all of the varieties we have over there is giving us a great cup of coffee.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, we've been trying a very wide range of your coffees now for 2 years, and that's it's it's very obvious. You guys have also done very well in Cup of Excellence in Costa Rica historically as well. Second place last year, if I remember correctly. Yeah, scoring. Do you remember how high that scored?
In 90.88 or almost 91.
Some very, very good coffee. One thing that I've personally always been very interested in, kind of going back to the varietals again, something you've been referencing to me before here as well. I mean, you said that from starting experimenting with a new varietal, planting initial seeds, we're looking at a 10-year process before you can have a proper harvest and then start kind of making money or getting some kind of return on this coffee. And I hear 10 years and I think, wow, that's a very long time. I mean, obviously you guys are farm by generation, but also on a personal level, where do you get the patience for, right? And how do you actually structure this to work properly when it's so long time?
Well, if you're a farmer, you have to be patient, and that's something nice about the job we do. We learn that there are cycles in life that you have to respect. So when I get new seeds, of course, I need first to test them in our Torah. So if someone says this is the best variety in the world, look the results they are having in, I don't know, in Colombia or in Panama or in another place of Costa Rica, but maybe in our farm it won't work, or we won't have productions over there. So what I would like to do always first is to plant around between 500 to 1,000 trees of that variety, because if I only have 2 or 3 plants, maybe I will manage that with very carefully, and I won't have the results that I will have in a bigger scale production. So I try to give the same conditions that I give to the rest of the plantations of our farm. So I get the seeds and I have to make the nursery, and I will have the first decent production for 4 years after that. Then I take that variety to our cupping lab, and if we find out that it's a great quality, then we have to take more seeds, make a new nursery, a bigger one, and wait another 4 or 5 years to have the first decent production. So we can provide.
And still in that process, in that second stage, there's still no guarantee that they come out exactly the way you want to, right?
But it will be, we will be more sure that it will work, because we already managed that variety with the same conditions that we will manage a bigger plantation. We don't give any extra care to something that we're testing. We give exactly the same conditions that we are giving to the rest of the farm. So and after that we will use the seeds from the same plantation, so they are the same, and we select the seeds from our trees, and so we will be more certain about the results of that second production of a certain variety.
Oh, amazing. I've always been really interested in the kind of infrastructure on a farm level, in terms of, I mean, how many people work at Volcan Azul today, and how is that kind of managed on the back end? Because as a roaster, I mean, most of our impression with farms and producers are basically what we cup, right? Yeah. Then of course some of us come and they visit farms and so on, but it's still hard to understand exactly how, let's say, the more logistical or business side of a kind of coffee farm is, how that actually works.
Well, first we have to understand that we have to be very clear that the quality comes from the field. When you have a mill, sometimes you forget about the plantations. So we have to be very careful with that, and we have to know that we have to give to the plantations all the management that it requires. So in our main plantation, we have all year around 8 workers all the year, and after that, during the harvest season, we have 100 additional coffee pickers that they always come back. That's very important. We have to pay extra so they can pick just the ripened cherries, and they come back for one reason, because they like to work there, and they already know how to do it. We don't have to every year to be on top of them, showing them how to pick the right cherries. So we already have the confidence with this. It's a very big family that they always come from Nicaragua, and they come for that season. And for them, it's a good business. For us, it's also a good business because they pick great quality. But that's during the harvest season. The rest of the year in the plantation, we have to be very careful with diseases. You know, the big problems with the rust in Costa Rica. That I don't know, 6-7 years ago it wasn't a problem. So the first year we had the rust disease in our plantations was we lost around 25-30% of our production from that year, and maybe 50% of the next year. So it was really tough for us. So we have to be on top of our plantation, looking that we don't have any disease. So our first job is to take care of the plantations during the rainy season. That it's maybe the time of the year that most of the roasters don't go to the farms. So it's basically to maintain the trees are healthy, that they have the fertilization that it requires. We always we take the soil to a lab to see which nutrients we are lacking there, because basically when we pick the cherries, we are taking off those nutrients from the soil. So what you have in a bin of everything that makes that bin, it comes from the soil. So we have to replace that back or give it back to the soil. So our main fertilizer is from the pulp. We make an organic fertilizer from the pulp of the coffee, and then we of course we need some other nutrients, and that's why we take that soil to the lab and we add what we are lacking over there. So that's the most important part, because we want to develop that bean to be strong enough, and that it will be even in all plantations. So at the end, when I send those green beans to you, you will have a steady density of all the beans, so you will have an even roast of our coffee. And of course, we have to take care of the roads inside the plantation, and then prepare. The other step is to prepare the meal for the new crop.
Sure.
And it's just maintain the machines and to have everything ready for that. Everything is working properly, because we think that managing the harvest is like managing a crisis. You don't know if you're going to have rain during the harvest season. Last year it was a strange year. We had almost 3 weeks of rain during the harvest. And milling coffee is basically drying coffee.
Sure.
This is drying it from,
which makes it difficult if it rains for 3 weeks. Yeah.
And we in our region, it's the harvest season happens always during the dry season. So it's something we didn't plan to have rain, but you have to adjust this. The harvest is a crisis that you have to take to imagine how to have a solution to every single thing you are going to have. Every single harvest is different, so sure. You have to adjust to.
How did you end up adjusting to last year then, when you have 3 weeks of rain, when you weren't supposed to have rain? Well, how do you fix that?
We had to dry 24 hours a day. We had to make bigger patios, or more African beds, extra African beds. In one point, we had, it was crazy, almost all the meal with African beds all around the meal of new beds. But at the end, we managed to have a good quality from last harvest. Also, we have some mechanical dryers. I always like to dry sun and after give the final point in the mechanical dryers. But we have to be very careful with mechanical dryers. We cannot give high temperatures. We have to give a rest to the coffee because in order to protect the quality, if we do it continuously, we will over dry the outer part of the bean and we will have some humidity inside the bean.
And end up with an unstable water activity,
Yeah.
most importantly, right? Yeah.
And something that we are proud is that our clients say that they can roast the coffee even 1 year later of that crop and they still have good quality. And that's thanks to drying it properly or doing it the right way.
Sure. I think what we see from a roasting perspective, and this goes basically across all origins at the moment or all farmers in the world as well, is that drying for us is probably the most important thing, right? And we see a huge difference across different origins and producers based on especially how long it's been dried. So to some extent, the longer the better. That's not completely true, but to some degree, because the water activity seems to come out a lot more stable and the shelf life is just so much better, right?
Yeah, and at the end, you can go to origin and you can cup some really good coffees, but if they last 2 months, it's not good for you. So, and I think that's what makes micro mills and estate coffees different, because we control how much coffee is coming from the plantation. So we don't have a lot of coffee coming behind, and we can give the time to the coffee to dry properly. So, for example, big mills in Costa Rica, they tend to dry coffees in 36 hours.
Sure.
So it's really short. And it happens what I talked to you before, that maybe the outer part of the bean is over dried and the center of the bean is still more humid. So in our case, for example, for a natural, it's around 14 to 15 days. And the only way to do that is that you don't have this pressure from behind of a lot of cherries coming from the field, and you have to be very fast to give more space to the new
I think a lot of us on the kind of barista slash, well, I mean, maybe not just in Europe, but on the roaster side of things, a lot of us have this very romanticized version of a farm, right? But as you mentioned as well, in a lot of cases, especially in bigger production, right, it's not necessarily about how do we make this coffee the tastiest, right? It's business and it's logistics, and it's about, as you said, making that coffee move. And if you're a mill that is producing a very, very high amount of coffee, then you need to stress the processes, right? We've seen that in, I'm not going to go in too deep in this, but Ethiopia, I think it was 2 seasons ago, we had some really, really famous mills that were getting so famous that their production almost doubled. And you could taste that so clearly in the cup profile that the drying times just wasn't properly done. Everything was really stressed, and the quality of that coffee just disappeared, right?
That's something very important. We already know as family what's our limit in volume. We're not going to produce more than what we think we can manage in a good way. We prefer to say that we don't have coffee instead of giving. Instead of lowering our quality, and it's also we don't want to overexpose our brand. We want to have this long-term relationship with the roasters that work with us, with our partners, and if we're selling to everybody, we won't have these solid relationships with our partners around the world. So.
I think that's a super important part of it, right? And there's something that I'm trying very hard with April as well to do on the other kind of thing, right? Because you have the same thing there as a lot of roasters are using the same green coffee, and then you have a lot of coffee shops in the world are using the same roasters, right? And I also strongly believe in these kind of independent collaborations more so than anything else. I want us to take a bit of time because we scratch on the surface of leaf rust, which you can't talk about coffee in Central America without referencing leaf rust. I mean, it's one of the absolute biggest challenges that you guys have. And with that hand in hand comes, organic farming, biodynamic farming, which is something that a lot of people in Europe, pretty ignorantly, unfortunately, but are demanding or asking for more and more, quite often without understanding the situations of the farmers in different parts of the world, right? Do you want to share a bit about, because we had a discussion about that yesterday as well, and you said something really interesting about, especially about certifications, about how to some extent easy that is. You mentioned one in particular, which I thought was really interesting, where you would get a certifications. We don't need to mention the name of the certification, but they would come and basically control you every 3 years. And what you do in between there, you can do whatever you want. No one really cares, and you would still get certified, right? So I think there's a misconception, big time, on my side of the industry in terms of what that actually means and the value of these certifications.
I think the best certification there is the one that we have right now with you, is this direct rate. The roasters that use our coffee, they come to our farm every year. They go around, they can go freely around and see by themselves that what we are talking here is true. For example, it was really nice last 2 harvests ago that our French roaster, it was the first time he was going to buy from our farm, and in our brochures and in our webpage we talk about the conservation areas that we own, and most of those conservation areas are in the south of Costa Rica that are a 5-hour drive from our mill. And he came to our farm. Yes, you talk about this, but I want to go there and see if it's true. And we were in the middle of the harvest. It's the busiest time of the year, but it was really nice. I went with him to that place, and if it was a lie, it will be very really strange to say to him, no, we cannot go. So the best certification is that people can be confident that their roaster is going to the place where he's buying the coffees, and certified by himself that what we're talking about is true. Is for me the best way to know the real thing.
Where are a bit shifting gear here, but something I'm always very interested in as well is that, and you said that over dinner as well, where you said, I can't imagine doing anything else than being a coffee farmer, right? Which is interesting for several reasons, because if we look at South Central America today, we look at coffee prices today, we look at average age of a coffee farmer today, then in most cases, if you're on the younger side of things, you're not going to start farm coffee, right? We see a generational shift here that kind of needs to happen, but it's not necessarily happening all over the world. But yet you're so extremely determined that this is what I'm doing, and it would be very interesting to share just a bit about like what's your personal background, right? Obviously you grow up on a coffee farm, right? But I mean, was coffee farming always, yes, this is what I'm going to do, or did you revolt as a teenager and wanted to do something else, or what's the process there?
Well, I talked to you about the tradition, and I think the best way to show you about my background in coffee, like, I think this picture over here is the best example of, I was always with my father at the farm, and we went together to work with him, but for us it wasn't work. It was my best memories as a child, they have to do with coffee. Going to the mill when I was little, for me it was amazing to see the cherries going in a little channel with water, and see all the machines working and taking off the pulp. Also, the smell of a truck full of cherries is for me something amazing. Also, when you are drying coffee, the smell of the mucilage, the drying, those are for me the best memories, the best smells, and I cannot explain you with words the big passion I have for everything that has to be with coffee. But it unites my family. Always the long vacations in Costa Rica, they are from the end of December to February, and we always went back to the farm. So we had Christmas in the farm. It was really nice to be at the farm because it's the dry season and it's windy, and it's a magical place for a kid to be in Christmas in the farm. I even imagine Santa Claus coming to the farm in Costa Rica. So in this kind of pictures where you can see all my background in how I grew up alongside the plantation, and it's something that I also want to transmit when I have children in the future. And
yeah, of course.
And also there is here a really good picture that here I understood that we had to be on top of every detail. Here you can see me when I was younger with my father, that we were checking a container that we were exporting back then. And this is me maybe a couple of years ago. But I'm always, when we are closing a container or we are exporting something, I'm always there. I'm always taking the samples and making the control of quality. And I understood that since I was little. So that's why during the harvest season I live 10 meters away from the mill, and there is not a big secret producing coffee. You just have to be there. Sure. And to be on top of every detail and to solve any problems that you have. Everything has a solution when you're processing coffee. So the big secret is to be there. There's no other way to. And I think the same in a roastery. That,
I mean, sure. I mean, it's. I think we see that. Well, we see it everywhere. We see it on farms, as you say. We see it in roasteries as well, where it's. I mean, there's a lot of roasters that were really good in the past and are maybe not as good now, or there's a lot of roasters that are very good now, and it all comes down to having people in the company that actually truly cares about the quality. I mean, because we all do, I'm sure on a farm level that's true as well, we all do good coffee, we all do not so good coffee, right? We all do mistakes to some extent, and the difference between the very best companies are the ones that are like, okay, I have a process for recognizing those mistakes, and I'm making sure that those mistakes will never actually reach the people that are paying for my coffee, right? Because you take pride in quality, and I think that's really the most important part, right? And I'm a true believer also from a farm perspective that it's something we believe in very strongly at April, is that quality will prevail. That's a bit of a fluffy thing to say, but in the end of the day, I think, you know, we're so many people, so many farmers, so many roasters trying to do so many things now, and I think I see to some degree. I'm not sure if this. It will be interesting to hear what you think about this as well from a producer perspective. But what I see is a slight decline in quality. So what I see is that the overall focus on quality is more challenging now than it was before, because a lot of people are stressed financially. And when you're stressed financially, you tend to focus less on quality and more on trying get those numbers running, right? But no, I definitely agree with you. I mean, it comes down to that's why I thought this 10-year process with the varietal is so interesting as well, because attention to detail over that many years, it's very difficult. I think you need to have a true passion for what you do to be able to, I mean, it's a lot of work in the end of the day, right? I mean, it's not easy work either, and you really need to love it to be able to perform.
I think it's very important to always be true to yourself, true to your values, never change those good values that you already have. And the most difficult part is to be constant through all the years. And for us, we have to be very clear that our most important job is back there in Costa Rica, to always be inside our plantations and to manage everything personally. So it's not possible if I will be always traveling around, which is also really nice, and it's also important to know what our partners are doing abroad, because if we understand them, we can make a better job back then in Costa Rica. But our most important job is back there. If I'm not present, if I'm not always on top of those details, sooner or later I will lose quality. Of course, I can make mistakes. Everyone makes some mistakes, but you have to be there to realize about those mistakes and fix them.
I mean, that's to some extent at least how I'm trying to do it at April as well. I mean, I'm traveling a lot as a person as well, but I mean, we have 2 production days a week, and then I'm in Copenhagen. I would never be anywhere else in the world on production day, right? Because that's the important part. On a more, because I mean, you're a coffee farmer, owner, but you're also then, let's say, a manager, right? Because you have a team. And I'm curious from an entrepreneurial side of things, because sitting here talking with you, it's so obvious the passion, right? You're really into this, yeah. and that's amazing to see. But how then do you transfer this to your staff? Has that been a challenge, or has that been very easy, or is that a process, or is that something you're working on, or how does that work? Because I mean, you can't do it all by yourself. You need a team.
I think the best way to transfer this passion to our collaborators in the farm is to give the example. If they do a very hard work and they see you away from the farm, or just see them working, they won't see this passion, they won't get this passion. And I think that the clue is what I was telling you before, is to be there. I work with them. If I have to manage the machines, I manage the machines in the mill. I have sometimes when we were starting with naturals, taking off the pulp of naturals when they are dry, the first time was really difficult for us, because we didn't know how to do it right. We saw how to do it, but we didn't do it by ourselves. So the first year we had we needed to send very quickly a container to Australia, because it's a long trip, so they need it earlier, and we had a deadline. So I was at the mill until the 2 a.m., 3 a.m. working on that, and I know that people that work with us, they see that we also make a big effort there. Everybody is working there, and now we have selected the people that understand that passion, and of course without them it will be very difficult to continue producing coffee, but they have to see that we are also putting our effort in the business. So, and of course we have to work harder than our workers, and if they see that, they're going to understand that they also have to be passionate about producing coffee. And that's why we only select the ones that understand that passion.
Where do you get inspired from? I mean, as a coffee farmer, we've been having this discussion now as well, because we have a few other producers with us here in Bordeaux as well, and been having dinners and coffees together, and you guys are like all Central America and South America, and that's really interesting to just hear the interaction between you guys as producers, right? And I'm always curious where if coffee farming for you is a relatively closed process where you have a goal, you have a vision, you have a direction where you want your coffees to go, or is it a process where you travel around and you get inspiration from other farmers, both in Costa Rica, but also outside of Costa Rica? How does that process work for you?
My main inspiration is basically, of course, I explained you about our tradition and how my ancestors did the work back then, and how we want to be worthy of that effort they did. But also my parents and how they educated us, how they transferred all that knowledge to us, and all the effort they did raising my siblings and me. And for me, that's a big inspiration. And also, I want to be worthy of what my ancestors did, but also what my parents did, and all what they gave to us. Because I'm working really hard with varieties and all that, but my father was the one that was managing and making all the farms, which is a more difficult job. Now I have this great terroir where I can bring the varieties, and almost all varieties give us a great cup of coffee. So, but he did a harder work. So that for me is a really good example, and it needs my inspiration for doing what I'm doing right now. And of course, I go to other farms to see, and we share some information with other farms that we have a big friendship. I don't see them as rivals, so with many of them we share even varieties. I give them some of our seeds, and they give me some of what they have over there, and that's also an important part. In Costa Rica, we have many small farms, and for me, it's also an inspiration how these local farmers they have continued with this with the coffee plantations, and now with their micro mill, and how their family is still united thanks to the coffee. And that's also a big inspiration for us in coffee.
What are which I'm also really interested in, what has been the biggest challenges for you throughout this whole process? From how old were you when you started to basically run the farm, or really taking responsibility for the future of it? And what has the kind of biggest challenges been over that process?
I started with a bigger responsibility since I went out of high school. I went to college in Costa Rica, so I started to work at the same time that I was studying college. And my father started. I started working in driving a tractor or doing some basic work in the farm. So I think it was great because I understood how it was to work in the basic labors of the farm. And after that, I started managing some of the plantations, and after I started to have good results, then I started managing more all the farms, and after that I started managing the mill and all the export, all the export paperwork that we have to do back then. So I started from the basic, and then going up since I was 18. So maybe when I was 23, 24, I was already managing all the exports from our farm. And I think at the beginning to have new processes, because many years ago we only did washed coffees, and one SHB it was a good quality, but it was not a micro lot quality. So changing that mentality from from a good gourmet SHB to a micro lot where you have to have a really good traceability since it comes from the field, and then to have each bag with a label. The traceability is something really important for us. You can see here a picture of the warehouse, but the old mentality to have all together, it was easier to change that to this, that we cannot lose not a single bag, because if you buy an H1 and I send you a Caturra, you will be very mad with me. So
sure, and I mean that it never happened from you, but it has happened in other cases.
yes, so that's why to change this mentality that now we have to take care of many details of we have even lots of one single bag or even 20 kilos, and I cannot lose that in our mill. So that was at the beginning. It was when you change anything, the first year it's a little bit difficult, but if you're on top of the details, sooner or later it will get easier for you. So now the people that work with us have understood all that, and they are careful. And also, I always say to our collaborators that it's better that they if they damage a coffee or they don't know what a coffee is, it's better to say about that. So it's they are comfortable of telling me that if they messed something a lot or something, that they can talk to me about that. It's better to not sell one lot than sending you a lot that was mismanaged by our collaborators or by me. So that they can feel safe, that they can talk to me about anything without having any fear or about telling that.
Yeah, which is it's extremely important, right? That's a very big part of being able to maintain quality. To kind of round it up, because we have some other commitments later today we need to do as well. But so Volcan Azul is a farm with a very impressive background in terms of heritage, right? We're talking over 200 years, more or less, of farming. And I'm curious then, what will we see from Volcan Azul in the future? What is the plan for the next 200 years?
The idea, first is to have a constant quality. You will see a wide menu of flavors from our farm, thanks to the varieties. My idea is to plant something new every year, so always to be in this constant process of testing new varieties. So the idea is to have something new. We are working with varieties that they already exist, but we are also working with new hybrids of different, maybe a geisha with a Caturra or geisha with BSRG. I don't know, there are many options in the future, so we will never stop this process of having new flavors from our farm. And also the most important part is to be sustainable. So one of my favorite things about what we do is the conservation part. So we have to take care first of the soil, and then we have to take care of the microclimate. But yeah, of the soil we take care with the organic material, but the microclimate, how we can protect it is to protect the forest. So our family, we own over 1,500 hectares in Costa Rica, and it's the best way to contribute to the humanity, because we are contributing to climate change. I told you earlier about the microclimate, the special microclimate we have in our farm, thanks to all that big forest alongside our plantations. But we also have a lot of in the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica, that is in the far south of Costa Rica. So I believe Costa Rica is a role model in conservation. 98% of our energy is renewable.
Wow.
We are a small country. We are 0.03% of roads surface, but we have 5% of roads biodiversity. So it's a very dense country. And also, Costa Rica has reverse deforestation. So in the 1950s, we had around 25% of forests in the country, and now we are over 50%. So that's a big achievement, and it's something every people in Costa Rica is proud of our conservation model. And it's something that you are safe when you are buying Costa Rican coffee. It's not a place that used to be a rainforest 2 years ago and they cut it down. We have even reverse reforestation. And in our case, most of our conservation areas are in this part of Costa Rica, in the Osa Peninsula. That for me is a great place. In this small area, we have 2.5% of world's biodiversity. And well, it's something we have always believed in the conservation. My father started buying these bigger conservation areas in the 1980s. And for me, the experience with the rainforest is amazing. Sometimes if you are really stressed because of during the harvest season, when you have a lot of work and you go to this farm, our house there is alongside the rainforest. So we don't have electricity there. So all you hear is the rainforest, the monkeys, the birds, and when you come back from that farm, you come back like a new person. And the Osa Peninsula is great. You can see here in this picture the rainforest alongside the sea. It's the most beautiful place. You can see whales, dolphins, and these are some of the animals you can find there. The jaguar, wild pigs, puma, monkeys, and this is an amazing animal, the sloth.
Yeah. We're gonna make sure that you guys listen. Maybe we can put this like as a PDF or something in a link, so that people can naturally go through and see all of these pictures as well, because it's truly amazing.
But at the end, I was talking to you about this because of sustainability. The idea is that we already have 200 years of history with coffee. The idea is that we can have 200 more years with this, and here you can see my niece and my nephews there. The idea is that they can continue, and in the future, when I get to have children, that they can continue with this tradition, and that's why we do this. Maybe I have this saying that what I want is that my best microlate must be the last one I produce. So we have to always be improving something with new varieties, making our processes better. So that's what our idea and our philosophy.
Sure, and I think that, I mean, you can taste that in the coffees. You clearly can, right? And I think that's the amazing part, right? I think that's a great way to wrap it up. I want to, before we stop this, because what all of you listening should do now is that you guys need to try Alejo's coffee, right? You need to try Volcan Azul coffee. Can you pinpoint some roasters that you know have your coffee somewhere in the world, so that these guys can buy it? Obviously, you're going to be able to. We're launching an H1 varietal that we have, honey processed, at the same time as you guys are listening to this. So if you guys are listening to this, you can email us, and we make sure you get the coffee. But are there some other ones that you know as well where you could try it?
Well, in Europe, we have a great relationship with I think it's a really good roaster, Søren Stiller. Sure.
Up in Aarhus, also in Denmark.
Yes.
Where we are, yeah.
Here in France, we're working with Terrasse de Café. We're really happy with Christophe and Joachim, his barista, and I think they're doing an amazing job. I think those are some of the good roasters that we are working with, and of course April Coffee. But
long story short, make sure you try the coffee. because it's truly amazing coffee. Alejo, thank you very much. I know we have a packed schedule this weekend, but I'm really happy that you took the time to sit down with us. I'm sure everyone listening will really appreciate it as well.
No, thank you very much. I'm really happy and really proud that you chose me to make this podcast, and I hope people enjoy it.
For sure. Thank you very much.
From us here at April, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share with your friends, family, and colleagues. Thank you.